Section 1. Introduction. The perfect life. I always thought I had everything I could ever want. A husband who adored me, a home that was warm and welcoming, and a life that many would envy. People often told me I was lucky, and I would nod with a small smile, but deep down, a quiet unease had started to grow inside me. On the outside, everything looked perfect, but inside I felt an emptiness I couldn't name. Every morning began with routine. The sound of the coffee machine, the gentle hum of my husband humming a tune, the small gestures of love that should have made me happy. And yet, as I sipped my coffee, staring out of the window at the world moving beyond my carefully arranged life, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wanted more. Something undefined, something exciting. I loved my husband, truly I did. He was kind, attentive, and stable. Yet, love alone could not fill the silent gaps that had begun to form between us. Our conversations, once lively, had become predictable. The laughter we shared seemed rehearsed, almost mechanical. I found myself remembering the days before marriage, when life felt unbounded, full of possibility and energy. Where had that spark gone? Evenings were the hardest. As I watched him relax in front of the television, his hand occasionally brushing mine, I felt a pang of longing. Not for someone else yet, not entirely, but for a feeling I had forgotten. Desire, adventure, passion beyond the comfort of our predictable life. I started noticing the small things in my environment. The way people at work laughed freely, the casual compliments strangers exchanged. I was drawn to energy I didn't have at home. At first, I tried to convince myself that these thoughts were harmless. Everyone feels restless sometimes, doesn't everyone? But the more I thought, the more I realized that this wasn't a passing phase. There was a part of me that wanted more. More than love, more than stability, more than the life my husband provided. And so, I began to wonder, what would it be like to feel truly alive again? To be desired in a way that made my heart race. I tried to bury these thoughts, but they kept creeping in, whispered in quiet moments when no one was looking. One evening, as we sat together in the soft glow of our living room, I watched him carefully, noting the lines around his eyes, the way he smiled when he thought I wasn't looking. A wave of guilt washed over me, but even then, I couldn't deny the emptiness growing inside. Something had shifted in me, and I could sense that life as I knew it was about to change. The cracks were subtle at first. A lingering glance, a distracted thought, a desire for something beyond what I had. But they were there, and deep down I knew that one day I would have to face them. The story of my marriage, the story of my life, was about to take a turn I could never have predicted. Section 2. The turning point. Desire meets temptation. It started innocently enough. A colleague at work, someone I barely knew at first, began noticing me in ways my husband no longer did. A compliment here, a kind word there, nothing overt, but enough to make my heart flutter. I tried to ignore it, reminding myself that I was married, that I was happy, or at least I had every reason to be. But the more he spoke to me, the more I realized how much I had missed being seen. Truly seen. Not as a wife, not as someone who should fit into a box, but as a person, as a woman with desires and dreams that had been tucked away for too long. His attention was electric, a shock that made me remember feelings I had buried under years of routine and compromise. Every conversation we had seemed innocent, yet the energy between us was undeniable. The way he laughed at my jokes, the way his eyes lingered just a moment too long, it was intoxicating. I tried to push it away, tried to focus on my husband and my life at home, but the temptation was pulling me closer with every passing day. I found myself thinking about him constantly, replaying our interactions in my mind. Guilt and desire battled within me. I asked myself repeatedly, how could I feel this way about someone else? I love my husband. And yet, love felt complicated now, weighed down by routine and predictability. What I craved was passion, attention, a connection that made me feel alive. Then came the first step, the emotional crossing of a line. A text message, playful and light, that escalated to conversations that stretched long into the night. We shared thoughts, secrets, laughter, even frustrations about our lives. It felt safe, thrilling, and dangerous all at once. I told myself it was just conversation, just a harmless connection, but deep down, I knew I was flirting with something far more dangerous. The thrill of secrecy made my pulse race. Each hidden moment, each whispered message felt like a lifeline to a part of myself I had ignored for years. I tried to resist, tried to stay faithful, but my heart betrayed me with every smile, every stolen glance. Desire had taken root, and I could no longer pretend it wasn't there. Even at home, the world felt different. I was restless, distracted, sometimes irritable. I would catch myself staring off into space, my mind wandering to someone I shouldn't think about. I wanted to feel something more, to be wanted, to be seen beyond the comfortable familiarity of my marriage. It was terrifying. I knew the danger, knew the consequences if I let myself go too far. But desire, once awakened, is relentless. It consumes every rational thought, and I realized I was already too deep to turn back. That invisible line I had promised never to cross was slipping further from my grasp with every passing day. By the time I acknowledged it fully, I wanted more, and I wanted it now. I wanted to feel alive in ways my husband no longer could provide. And in that moment, I knew life as I had known it was about to change forever. The choices I would make next would alter everything, and there would be no going back. Section 3. The revelation. Everything falls apart. I knew the risk, yet I had convinced myself that I could control it, that I could continue this secret, feeling alive without consequence. But secrets have a way of unraveling, and mine did so in the most devastating way imaginable. It began with subtle changes at home. My husband's eyes, once warm and trusting, started to flicker with suspicion. He noticed the late nights, the phone I kept close, the occasional distracted smile that didn't belong to him. At first, I dismissed it, telling myself he was overthinking. But the tension was real. He was watching me, questioning me, and I could see the worry etched into his face. I tried to act normal, to preserve the facade of the life we had built. I smiled, laughed, and maintained our routines, but the guilt was suffocating. Every conversation I had with my lover felt heavier, tainted by the knowledge that I was betraying the one person who had given me stability and love. And yet I couldn't stop. Desire had me in its grip, and I felt powerless against it. Then came the day of discovery. I remember it vividly, like a photograph frozen in my mind. My husband had found messages on my phone. There was no denying it. The evidence was clear, undeniable. I had hoped, foolishly, that he would never see, that my secrets would remain hidden. But reality has a way of crashing in, and that day it hit with the force of a storm. The confrontation was devastating. His voice, calm but trembling with anger and hurt, filled the room. "Why?" he asked simply, but the weight of that one word shattered me more than any scream could. I had no answers that would make sense. There were no excuses that could justify my actions. The betrayal was complete, and I could see it reflected in his eyes. The disbelief, the heartbreak, the anger. I tried to explain, fumbling through words that sounded hollow even to me. I spoke of loneliness, desire, longing for something I couldn't name, but my words fell flat. They were no match for the pain I had caused, no match for the trust one had destroyed. The house, once a sanctuary, felt suffocating now, a silent witness to my failure. The days that followed were a blur of arguments, tears, and silence. My husband withdrew, unable to look at me without remembering the betrayal. I was left alone with my guilt, replaying every moment that had led to this point. How could I have risked everything for fleeting excitement? How could I have hurt someone who loved me unconditionally? Even in isolation, the memories of my affair lingered. Messages, stolen moments, the thrill that had once felt so intoxicating. But now, they only reminded me of the destruction I had caused. The person I had become, driven by desire and curiosity, was unrecognizable to me. And I realized that life had changed irreversibly. There was no undoing the past, no erasing the pain I had inflicted. The revelation was brutal, but it was also a turning point. I was forced to confront my choices, to see myself honestly for the first time in years. The thrill of desire had come at a cost far greater than I had imagined. I had wanted more, and now I had it all in the form of loss, heartbreak, and regret. Section 4. Resolution, Reflection and Lessons Learned. In the aftermath, I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that no longer felt whole. The house was quiet, but the silence was heavy with memories of what had been lost. I spent hours reflecting on my actions, trying to understand why I had strayed, why I had risked everything for something fleeting. It was in those quiet moments that I began to see the truth. I hadn't simply wanted excitement. I had wanted to feel alive again, to reclaim a part of myself I had neglected. But the way I sought it, through secrecy, through betrayal, was destructive. I realized that desire, when unchecked, could blind you to everything that truly matters. Rebuilding trust, if it were even possible, would be a long road. My husband's eyes still held hurt, and my own guilt was relentless. Every interaction was a reminder of the bridge I had burned, every gesture a test of whether forgiveness could ever take root. I began to understand the weight of honesty, the necessity of communication, and the value of shared vulnerability in a relationship. I also learned about myself in ways I hadn't anticipated. I had been searching for fulfillment outside because I hadn't acknowledged it within. True satisfaction, I realized, comes from understanding your own needs, desires, and boundaries, not from seeking them in someone else's attention. The affair had forced me to confront my flaws, my weaknesses, and the parts of myself I had ignored for far too long. Forgiveness, I learned, is complicated. I could not simply undo the past or erase the pain I caused. But I could take responsibility, make amends, and choose to grow. Whether my marriage could survive was uncertain, but I knew that I could no longer run from my own truth. I had to face the consequences of my actions with courage and humility. In time, I began to rebuild, not just my relationship but my sense of self. I sought to understand why I had wanted more, and I learned to channel that desire into growth rather than destruction. I learned to communicate, to express my needs, and to appreciate the love I had taken for granted. It was a painful process, but one that ultimately reshaped me into a more self-aware and thoughtful person. The story of my infidelity is not one of triumph or pride. It is a story of human weakness, desire, and the consequences of choices made in moments of temptation. But it is also a story of reflection, growth, and the hard-earned lessons that come from facing the truth. If I could speak to anyone watching this story, I would say this. Be honest with yourself and with those you love. Recognize your needs, communicate openly, and never take love for granted. Desire can be powerful, but the cost of pursuing it recklessly is far greater than the fleeting thrill it promises. In the end, I wanted more, but what I received was clarity. The clarity that life is fragile, that love is precious, and that actions have consequences. And while I cannot change the past, I can shape the future. One choice at a time, guided by truth, awareness, and the hope of becoming better than I was yesterday.